Hey guys, it's Kelly Watkins with the Bridge Group with eXp Realty, and I'm here with one of our awesome team members, Nicola Palmento with the Bridge Group, and today we're talking about all things appraisals. Thanks for joining us again today. So many people are asking us about appraisal. It's kind of a hot topic right now in today's market, and it's very important for sellers and buyers. And what an appraisal is, let's talk about that first. It is needed by the lender. So most homes, you're gonna have a loan on it, whether it's conventional, FHA, VA, and the lender's just not gonna lend you any amount of money for that home. It has to be worth it, otherwise it doesn't make sense for them. They're going to send an appraiser out to the property and make sure that the home is worth what was under contract for.
Now, an appraisal is different than a CMA. So as an agent, what we run for you is called a CMA, and this is just a comparative market analysis. We try to use a similar method to what an appraiser does because we want to try to get as close as we can to what we think that appraisal value is. But an appraisal is an official report that is ordered by an appraiser, and they're licensed to do that. So when you see a CMA, it is not an actual appraisal report. But as far as looking at similar properties in a similar area, looking at square footage, all the stuff that we go through when we're talking to our buyers and our sellers about what a house is worth, it's gonna be very, very similar. We're usually pretty close.
So one of the big steps in the process when we're working with buyers is waiting for that appraisal to come in.
Yes.
So what happens if the appraisal comes in and it's too low? So for example, we went under contract for $420,000. The appraisal comes in at $400,000. There's a $20,000 gap in between the appraised price and the sales price. So at this point, in a normal market, the buyer would go back to the seller and they would just begin negotiations again and say, can we meet in the middle? Can the seller come down? Is the buyer gonna come up? Now, the buyer can only come up over that appraised value if they have cash out of pocket. So not every buyer can do that, but it's definitely a conversation that you wanna have from the very beginning.
Usually we're starting off at a different place in a normal market. Normally offers are coming in maybe at or even below what the asking price is. So when we run into an appraisal problem, then any other buyer who's going to come and buy the house is probably going to end up with a similar appraisal report. And so typically it works in the best interest of both parties to just do a negotiation and make it work. Because going back on the market, other people might think, what's wrong with the house? Why didn't it sell? Why was it off the market and coming back on? So typically the seller might even get a lower offer than the one they originally accepted. So usually making up that $2,000, $3,000 difference makes most sense for it's a win-win for everybody. But in today's market, with offers going $20,000, $30,000 above asking price and sellers getting 15 to 20 offers, sellers aren't really as inclined to negotiate on that because they don't need to. So typically what we're finding today is a lot of buyers and sellers are looking for what's called an appraisal waiver.
So what is an appraisal waiver? So actually, on the appraisal waiver, which is a new document, a new TREC document, there's several different options, but the most common one that people are signing right now is waiving the option to back out based on the appraisal. So it's not saying that they're not gonna get an appraisal at all. The lender still needs the appraisal, but if it comes in under value, they cannot terminate the contract and get their earnest money back based on that. So that means they have to come cash out of pocket for the difference. So in the scenario we mentioned, if it came in at $400,000, the sales price was $420,000, the buyer would have to come out $20,000 cash out of pocket. And a lot of buyers are choosing to maybe put down a little bit less, which is actually an option for some buyers. If you have a larger down payment, you can adjust your down payment and use that money to come up with the difference. But again, this is totally a conversation that you have to have with your realtor ahead of time and your lender to determine what it is that makes sense for you and for us to know exactly very similarly of what that appraisal is going to come in at, because we don't know at the end of the day, but we can have a good idea of whether it's going to appraise or not.
Yeah, so we're going to do our job as real estate agents to run the CMA to get an idea of what we think it's going to appraise at. And this helps to inform our decisions so that when we do make that above ask offer, we're not completely surprised by the results of the appraisal. So we have our expectations managed. And like Kelly was saying, depending upon the type of loan product that you're using, how big your down payment is, what the loan to value ratio is, this is definitely going to be a conversation to have with the lender. I typically like to say have that conversation ahead of time so that you know what your options are going into it. But if you're using a conventional loan and you're putting a large down payment, a lot of lenders can keep, as long as they can keep the loan to value ratio at the right number, rather than you having to come out of pocket $20,000, you might just essentially be able to roll it into the loan by dropping your down payment amount and applying that towards that difference. As an example, I had a buyer do this recently, and their monthly payments actually only went up about $60. So $60 versus bringing $20,000 down, that makes a big difference. And so for some people, that actually might be a better option. And so you might not have to be as concerned about whether you need to come up with, where am I going to get an extra $20,000 for? Or I don't want to tie up $20,000 of capital into one asset. that could be an option. So have that conversation early on with the lender. If we're working with us at the Bridge Group, when we do our CMA, we're heavily involved with the lender. So this is gonna be a conversation that we're all gonna have ahead of time.
So why would someone sign this appraisal waiver? In today's market, we're listing homes and we're getting multiple offers within a day or two. We're getting anywhere between 5 to up to 40 offers on one property. And like I've said, some of them are cash offers. People moving from out of state, they have that cash to drop onto one property, so they don't need an appraisal. So a lot of sellers would prefer that. Or if they can get a higher price with a financing property with like a conventional or FHA loan, and you sign the appraisal waiver, you can compete with that cash offer. It's very similar because it doesn't matter what it appraises for. So the seller's a lot more inclined to accept one of the offers of the 40 if you guys sign that appraisal waiver. So that is something that, again, that will make your offer very, very competitive in today's market.
Yeah, anything that we can do to strengthen an offer, it's not always about who has the highest purchase price. Although that is important, having an offer, there's a lot of other terms, and the appraisal is just one of those terms that we like to focus on because that's the big one that everybody's talking about right now. But talking to Kelly, talking to myself, when you are in the midst of a transaction, you're making offers on properties, we're gonna give you coaching and advice and strategy in order to make the best and strongest possible offer that you can make, including using an appraisal waiver, which has come in handy a lot of times and gotten us to win offers that we weren't even necessarily the highest one.
We've seen a lot of people are asking, well, how many of the houses are actually appraising? And it's hard to say, but I would say that in the past few months, home prices have risen by, I think, 17%. So we're seeing a lot more properties come in at that sales price, more than not, just because the prices have risen so much.
Once you have 6 months of people paying extra for houses, now those become comparable properties. So now when an appraiser goes and does their appraisal report, they're actually going to have comps that support that higher purchase price. So we're actually not seeing too many of them come back not meeting appraisal anymore.
Maybe 20% we're seeing, maybe not meet that value. And usually it's not even that big of a gap. We gave the example of $20,000, but a lot of times it's just a few $1,000s. So it's really not as big of a difference, but it went ahead and got you that house, that property that you were under contract on. So if you're a buyer in today's market, definitely reach out to us here at the Bridge Group because we want to walk you through every step of the process. We want to make this process as seamless as possible. It is a journey right now for buyers to get under contract on a home that they love in today's market, but we have steps, we have processes to make sure that your offer gets accepted. So we love to chat with you more about your buying here in the Houston area, and we'll see you next week.